Hey there folks, welcome to Spectrum Pulse. We talk about music, movies, art, and culture. And today we're going to be talking about the new album from Felix Hagan and The Family called Attention Seeker. Okay, so I've talked earlier this year about acts embracing certain gothic or theatrical elements in their music, which has happened a surprising amount in 2017, or at least I've covered more of it. And obviously there's a sliding scale for it. On the one hand, you have artists like John Darnielle, the Mountain Goats, looking for a nuanced and very sincere discussion on all the trappings of gothic music. And on the other hand, you get acts like many of the SoundCloud shock rappers and Hollywood Undead, who grab up the superficial scare tactics to make themselves seem more edgy, imposing, and let's be honest, interesting than they really are. And yet, somewhere in the middle, you get an act like Creeper, a pop rock band drawing on the gothic, pseudo-baroque melodrama bands like Panic at the Disco that play with all the intensity and sincerity, but are more willing to have a little bit more fun with the trappings and a lot of the image. Because there is a limit to how much you can seriously take them, but you know what, that can be just fine with the right environment and the good tunes. So into all this comes Felix Hagan and The Family, a London rock group who in the grand tradition of camp draws upon pop rock, hair metal, vaudeville, and musical theater for their sound. Not quite as bombastic or epic as Meatloaf, not quite as textured and nuanced as Kyle Craft, but playing in a similar ballpark. They've been around throughout most of the 2010s, putting out EPs that range from remarkably catchy and pretty damn good to, well, a little bit too ridiculous for their own damn good. All the theatricality is a lot of fun, but it does strain credulity when they try to call anybody else posers. But there is a part of me that's always had a soft spot for this material. So when the votes came up on Patreon for me to cover this album, well, it's near the end of the year. There aren't that many new releases coming this week that I gave a damn about, so why the hell not? So I dug into Attention Seeker. What'd I find here? Well, here's the thing. Felix Hagan and The Family, they fall into a weird niche for me, which makes a record like Attention Seeker a little bit hard to quantify. Of course, the Meatloaf comparison, it's the obvious one. But there's also a level of self-aware yet straightforward gusto that reminds me of acts like Kieran J. Callanan and Alex Cameron. And for those of you who are wondering, yes, that later review will be coming out before the end of this year. You can be sure of it. But at the same time, it's not a completely stylistic throwback like elements of their work is, with choices oddly reminiscent of modern musical theater, and the sort of small-scale retro camp that will never play to a larger audience, but you know what, it can win a cult following regardless. And while a project like this is definitely flawed, and this one is, it's a solid enough introduction that I think you would otherwise enjoy. It's good, maybe not quite great, but still enjoyable. And where we need to start is with Felix Hagan himself. And on some level, he's a bit of a tough character to crack. I wouldn't quite put him up there with the glorious fountains of charisma and personality in this vein, like Kieran J. Callanan or Kyle Craft. He's got more of a jittery, struttering style that plays closer to Brendan Urie or any number of vaudeville fast talkers, but he's got the range and expressive presence in order to belt rather convincingly, and he plays off his backing female singers pretty damn effectively on songs like the old school rock of Hey, I Want You, or the spiky new wave grind of Delirium Tremendous, even if it's hard not to notice the more synthetic layers that are added on the songs like Be a Freak to some of those backing vocals. But we might as well get this issue right out of the way now. For a record that's clearly aiming for the sort of niche audience who will accept the balance between, you know, all that campy theatricality and retro glam that goes a little bit harder, you would expect a little bit more texture and bite to come through in some of the production. Something a little bit more ramshackle or gritty or eclectic. I mean, you already got them in the door with this sound. You're not going to alienate them by getting any weirder. Instead, throughout the majority of these tunes, you get an influx of nervy, synth-driven grooves that aren't just very modern, but often feel driven from a half dozen different eras and styles. From the faint burbles and cascades within the punk-inspired title track or on the double, the latter of which has an instrumental breakdown that I would swear comes exceedingly close to Muse's Knights of Sidonia, to the hollowed-out gallop of The World's Yours, to the disco and borderline G-funk tones behind the hook of Babe I Ain't Comin', to the spacey touches around Be a Freak that sound like they probably could have been pulled from about 6 years ago in the modern pop scene. And that's not even getting into tracks like Burn Down the City, which with the rumbling, deeper, bass-heavy atmosphere and the layered backing vocals, it could have easily been a Hozier tune. But I will say it's one of the better songs here, because it at least picks up a little bit more body and depth and texture in this mix. And that is, again, an issue for this album. For as much as I dig the old school glam and the new wave grooves and the compositions, the band cites ABBA as a major inspiration, and I definitely believe believe in how tight these songs are, but it's hard not to notice how some of the mixes feel pretty thin, with punchy grooves and solid shredding leads in the guitars and keyboards, but never quite the depth to make the hooks stick all that much harder, and that can be a problem on songs like the squonky Whoa There Kimmy, where I'm already not really a fan of the jerky minor keys on that hook. Now, thankfully, there are moments where it actually manages to come all together. Gene Kelly, it could be a vintage Meatloaf song with even a tighter groove, and I definitely like that. Fall Away is a sort of smoky power ballad with some really tasteful layering, one of the few songs that has that sort of depth. And the acoustic-driven Tough to Be a Dreamer, it's a fantastic closing song. I just wish there were more of those moments, or that they at least felt a little bit more consistent across the album as a whole, because it kind of feels all over the place. Of course, a big part of all of this ties back to the writing, and let me give Felix Hagan some praise right out of the gate here, because in terms of lyrical meter and flow, this is a damn catchy and well-refined set of songs that pack the lines with detail without ever feeling clumsy or overwritten. Loaded with plenty of witty turns of phrase that just roll off the tongue remarkably well. There's a great flow and energy to the writing here. And even more points for him, I'm a big fan of the framing and presentation of a lot of this content. Because let's be honest, this style can slip towards silliness and self-parody very quickly. It's happened before. And thus the line between self-aware wit and impassioned firepower, it's pretty narrow, especially when you realize our album's protagonist is embracing his inner glam rock idol, hungry for sex and success, playing with big, flashy, out there emotions, but at the same time constantly demanding the validation of the audience for all of it. He is an attention seeker as defined by the title, and thus it helps a lot that the framing is established right from the opening title track. It wants to rope in the audience into the desperate story even if it doesn't really like said audience, but it is just as self-aware enough to show how our frontman might be using said stage character to mask inner insecurities and chase a dream that there might be very little chance of attaining properly. It's the same desperate intensity that informs songs like Gene Kelly, as he's fully aware how much he pulls upon rock gods of the past to resurrect his image, or the over-the-top glitz of Hey I Want You, or the melodramatic proclamations of burn down this city. Sure, it can be ridiculous, but if you can suck you into the veneer of it for just a couple seconds, yeah, it really can connect. It goes over the top, but it works for me. But this can also bite both ways, mostly when it either slides towards the silly, like the recoiling from his own internal lust on Whoa There Kimmy, or the simple double entendre that drives Babe I Ain't Coming, or when it pivots to the overly sentimental, like on The World's Yours and Be a Freak. Empowerment anthems just with more fantastic imagery, let's be honest there. In contrast, what cut deeper for me is when the slices of reality became a little bit more pronounced in contrast, provided a little bit more detail for this character, like the imagined encounter with an old friend long gone and Fall Away, or especially the closer Tough to Be a Dreamer, which makes it abundantly clear that our protagonist knows his very limited audience and likelihood of failure, almost nihilistic in the hook and its bleak expectations going forward. But you know what, screw it. He's gonna find something that he loves and make it pay for him, make it into something that's real. There's no point in wallowing in any of the angst here. It's smart enough to see that reality, sure, but earnest enough to shoot for it anyway and not give a damn. Damn near perfect for this style and sound. Great way to end the album, especially as the locus of happiness for our attention seeker. It shifts from external to internal, showing some real growth here. So yeah, despite production issues and a few songs that slide a little bit too close to kitsch, I dug a lot of this album. Granted, part of it is that I'm a sucker for smart, well-constructed writing, a potent frontman, and this sort of self-aware theatricality that does take itself seriously and honestly sticks the landing pretty effectively, goes for that bombast. But if you can key into the right mindset like I did, I think you're gonna find a lot to like about this. As such, for me, it's getting a light 7 out of 10, definitely a recommendation, especially if you're a musical theater fan, or you like acts like The Darkness, or Meatloaf, or Kieran J. Callanan, or Alex Cameron. It's wild, it's melodramatic, and it can frequently reach the heights of ridiculousness, but you know what? It's also infectious, it's self-aware, and pretty damn smart to boot. You'll definitely want to hear this, folks. Check it out. So yeah, thanks a lot for watching. If you'd like to like and subscribe, I'd be more than grateful. Yeah, this is kind of a little bit obscure, but seriously, it was a lot of fun. I'm glad the patrons put this on my schedule, and you definitely want to check this out. Link to buy it's in the description below, and I got the poll up there for whoever of you guys actually managed to cover this and actually hear this. I'm curious to see what you guys thought of it in comparison with the EPs. Beyond that, if there's anything I can do to improve my presentation, I'm all ears. And if you guys want to get involved in my scheduling process or help support this channel, link to my Patreon is right over there, where 3 times a week you guys get to vote on my schedule, and once a week for the higher tier contributors, you guys get to add albums, movies, or even a top 10 list to that schedule. More details right over there. We're coming into the end of this year, folks. Just a little bit. I'm going to try to get done as much as I can, but till then, I'm Mark. You're watching Spectrum Pulse. and I'll see you next time.